probably 8, 9, 10 o'clock. I don't know.
Continue.
Great place to advertise. It will be for me.
Let's.
I found something I can put on the outside where it will be weatherproof. As soon as I get the rest of it done.
Hey, everybody. We're going to get rolling in just a second here. Continue. Hey, Lynette.
Hi, Mark.
Welcome.
Thanks.
We'll do this. And I need to make this guy co-host.
Yeah.
Good, how are you,
Doing good.
Preston?
I haven't
Good.
seen Scott in forever.
Yeah.
You guys been busy?
We'll get
Yeah,
rolling in about 60 seconds here.
we are. I
That's
mean,
it.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. How about you? Doing okay?
Trying to stay busy.
Dressler's closed already? Right between here and Fulton? According to something on Facebook to ruptured gas line.
Ooh, that ain't good.
That's what they're. I don't know, I guess I got here a little bit, about a half hour ago.
What's our login for our Wi-Fi here?
Capital K WLG 2019. 90% sure on that.
Let's see.
All right. Welcome, Bob. Welcome, Christina. Welcome, Michael, Stacy. Good to see you folks. I am masked right now. I'll take it off in a second. I guess I can take it off now. I've got the distances are established. My wife was diagnosed positive or tested positive the other day, so we are making it. I tested negative, but just doing my best to keep our
I don't
distances.
fear it, so I don't. That's just me.
All right.
I fear getting hit by one of these people driving on the roads these days.
Right.
People are insane.
Also fair. Yeah, one of our kind of friends of a number of our agents. Hey, Dee.
Hello.
Good to see you. Was in a
Hi, Dee.
fatal car accident just a week ago.
Ooh,
Aw.
is it around here?
Yeah. Yep.
There was a lot in Stark County recently.
Both he and the drivers in the other car were all killed. It's pretty tragic. I'm gonna grab my whiteboard real quick and give me 30 seconds.
I need to know where you got that whiteboard. I like that.
Amazon. Amazon.com.
What's that? Never heard of that.
Yeah.
Sounds like they're gonna be building in Louisville.
Oh, is that so?
Skyline Pine, maybe?
Skyline Pines.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yes, yeah, they just sold that. And that one's supposed to close down right after Labor Day, I think.
I wonder what I'll do with home prices in the area. I mean, that's a major, you know, important.
Yeah, depending on how much they pay their people, I don't know. If the Amazon's going in there, it's, you know,
Yeah.
they're trying to say they're not, but apparently they are, so.
What do we know what our password is?
You know, I just asked him. He said it's capital K WLG 2012.
2019.
Oh, 2019. I wrote it
That's
wrong.
what I thought. I usually get automatically connected, but,
I had my laptop earlier, but I just got home.
Okay.
2019. right?
Yes.
Imagine housing in that area by Skyline Pines will go up.
Did that work for you, Lynette?
You know, my device was going.
Oh, okay.
But Dee is trying it and it's not
And
working.
I got it.
Oh,
You
you
did?
did? Oh,
Okay.
you did. Okay.
That's what I had from before. Usually it's automatic.
Right.
If this wasn't operating today.
No, I guess not.
Okay. Thank you for bearing with me, and we will get started. We are here. Can I get just a thumbs up from somebody on, thank you, Preston, or a comment in the chat to see if you guys can hear okay? Anybody? All good. Thank you, Stacy. Appreciate it. You are here for part 2 out of 4, investing in real estate A to Z. So last week was all about, 2 weeks ago, excuse me, kind of big picture, the why, the skills associated with it, and first steps. And so today is more of a process-driven conversation around kind of where to begin and kind of tracing a transaction all the way through. This is trippy, knowing exactly where to look. So yeah, from A to Z. So we're going to talk about searching for properties, kind of the acquisition process, the rehab process, tenants, financing, et cetera. We'll go deeper than we did in our first conversation, but it's not, we'll go as deep as you want to go. How about that? Again, I'm not an expert on all of this stuff. I've done this stuff. I've walked this path a little bit, and I'm glad to share from my experience. Just as a reminder, so 2 weeks from today is the good, the bad, and the ugly of real estate investing. And I'm excited. We're going to have a kind of top area property manager come in and talk about the bad and the ugly side of real estate investing and how we can be thoughtful to avoid those things. So I'm excited for that conversation. And then on the 23rd, we're going to have an investor come in and talk about kind of what's good and what's not good as far as being an agent working with investors. And I know some of you have done that. Some of you are actively doing that. I feel like you guys always have a couple of investors that you're working with.
Yeah, we do. Usually on the buy side, but right now we've got a bunch of multi-units on the sell side that we're. I feel like I'm becoming the expert on crunching numbers.
We can have you up on the 23rd. There you go.
I use that term very loosely. I have a comfort zone that's happening there.
So this is what we're doing, and that's where we're going. Again, these are all on Mondays at 2. So if you want to block them off on your calendar, and each class is self-sustained. So if you missed the last one, that's okay. All right, investing from A to Z. We could go a lot deeper on all of these. We could probably create 8 or 9 steps, but in looking at kind of the broad brush strokes, and I'll read for those of you who are here and can't fully see that. So obviously step 1 is to search and analyze, and I'm going to kind of short circuit the search side of things for our conversation today, and we'll do a little bit more on the analysis side of things today. We're going to talk about the acquisition with a particular lens on financing. How do we actually get this done? We're going to talk about the rehab process, and I am not a flipper. Again, I'm buy and hold, make the right type of repairs sort of guy, because my time horizon is forever. We could have a flipper come in here and talk about that process because it's a much different frame of reference. You're looking at different numbers, you're prioritizing different things, and that is not what we're focusing on in this series. We'll also spend a good amount of time on the tenant side of things. I know Dee had some wisdom from our last conversation about what does it look like to create a funnel and a process and clarity, documentation, because getting quality tenants is one of the most important things, maybe the most important thing you can do in order to have sustained success in this. And then I'll touch a little bit about kind of the stabilization and where to go from here. So that's a kind of a snapshot of the processes. All right, search and analyze. I'll make a couple comments, and Preston has actually selected a property, nay, this property, for us to look at. Couple of thoughts. So as you were searching, we talked a little bit last class about criteria, numbers that you're looking at. We talked about cap rate. We talked about net operating income or NOI as valuable things to identify. But now we're focusing even more. You could talk about depth versus breadth in the search conversation. You could tell people, hey, I'm looking to invest in just a quality property in a decent area. Okay, that's marginally helpful. There's lots of those properties out there, but A, the people that you're voicing that to, whether it's on social media or realtors or whatever, may not feel all that empowered by it. Oh, quality property in a decent area, what does that even mean? Versus saying, hey, I'm looking for 3-bed ranches in these 2 zip codes with brick exteriors. That might pop up 12 houses for sale versus the 800 and some. I think there's 600 and some currently for sale in Starr County. That being said, your acumen for understanding what that property is from a number standpoint, when you're comparing apples to apples, say 12 3-bedroom ranches in Starr County made of brick. Okay, this one's listed for 179, this one's listed for 205. What's the discrepancy? You're really doing comps. I have personally moved more from a breadth approach to a depth approach. I guess I need to keep an eye on chat here. Because it enables me to specialize that much more, and I understand the value. I personally am drifting a little bit more towards single family homes, but that's neither here nor there. That's my personal sweet spot. Because of the exit strategies associated with it. There's more people looking for single family 3-bedroom ranches than there are for an 8-unit apartment complex. Doesn't mean that you can't find a good buyer there, but if you were to need to liquidate, you're going to have more people and more people falling in love with the single family than you are a multifamily. In your search, we know in real estate when you're looking that the first 3 rules of real estate are what? Location, location, location. And I think when you're looking at properties that you're not falling in love with, you can be tempted. I can be tempted to swing the other way. Whatever, it's just a property. Who cares what street it's on? I'm not going to be living there. My frame of reference is I want to look at properties and in areas where I would personally be okay with living. That's not a rule. That's not a law. That's just kind of a personal rubric that I've established. A, because I'm going to be there. And B, I think it's going to enable me to better understand what's going on in the area. So location is key. I am kind of a middle of the road, buy a medium grade property in a medium grade neighborhood because that's where the bulk of the market tends to be, as opposed to a high end property, which isn't going to cash flow as well, or a much lower end property where there's going to be great cash flow, but also commensurate issues that come with that. We'll dive into the analysis. I think just one comment on the analysis before we actually look at this particular property. I need to send all of this stuff over. I'm going to email some links to myself real quick so that it's on the proper screen. Hang on just a quick second, folks. This may not work. See if that works.
If they changed the way the setup on this, I couldn't figure out how to search it until today when I asked someone, where do you go to search for houses?
Okay. We're in action. So Preston has graciously agreed to identify a property for us. And I haven't really done any prep on this aside from finding it. And we are going to analyze this together. Okay. Can you guys see this? You share. Okay.
Is it possible to just turn the lights off up here? Will that take away the ability of the people online to see?
Nope.
Yeah,
That's perfect.
Okay, so Preston has sent us 1642 Lakeside Avenue. And so we are going to be evaluating this property as a viable option here. I'm going to email myself one other thing. Calculate. All right, so I have pulled up, there's a bunch of these out here, but a rental property calculator. Biggerpockets.com, I think I mentioned this last time, is kind of the place to go as far as real estate investing resources go. They have a fantastic tool. You only get 5 free analyses or reports. What it does is it crunches the numbers and then it puts it together in a report as though you are presenting it to an investor. Say, would you like to partner with me on it? So it's a fantastic tool. I'm all out of my free reports and didn't feel like upgrading it just today. So we'll be crunching it through here. So we're going to be looking at the financial numbers, which is ground zero, no pun intended, but then also kind of the qualitative elements of this. So this is a duplex. Is this a side-by-side or an up-down? Preston, looks like. How do they have it labeled? Unit 1, Unit 2.
With the rent differences, it's probably an up and down.
I think most of those on Lakeside are up and down.
It looks like in the back, it's an open basement.
Right. So this is a sided duplex. I would say in fair condition. For year built. 1957. Bunch of those around here. So let's just do a quick click through. Okay, you've got a garage. Technically, was there another garage in the back? No, that's it. Yard. Off-street parking, which in this area is common, but that's always a plus. It's a big negative if you don't have that. That's it's important to have it. If you don't have it, it's a strike. Because as you look at a property, it's not just okay, how do the numbers work, but who would want to live here and what would be their barriers for living here. So lack of off-street parking. In this instance, we'd be curious if does the garage actually work? Is that a functional thing or not? These look like dated pictures, but a dated but functional kitchen. Some decent wood floors. Looks like a radiant heat. Low quality carpet. They're showing us relatively recently updated HVAC, it looks like, and hot water in the front. We can see that they've talked about kind of the dimensions, the hookups, updates have been roof, windows, water heater, updated electric service, new front door, new refrigerator, new range, long-term tenants, updated and ready for new home ownership. So I look at that and say, it appears to be a foundationally reasonable quality property. Certainly not fancy, certainly not high end, but the price point is $149.9, so you wouldn't necessarily expect that. Last week I talked about the 1%. Yeah, I talked about the 1% rule, which for those of you who are joining us for the first time, that's the gross monthly rents combined, so $750 plus $650 in this instance, should combine, if it meets the 1% rule, should combine to be 1% or greater than 1% of the total purchase price. So in order for this to meet the 1% rule, you would either need to get it for 140 or increase the rents. In this scenario, the tenants have been here long term, and so that could make it a little bit more tricky or complicated to increase the rents. Other things to note qualitatively, the square footage is reasonable. It's 2-bed one bad. Always think about who are the sort of people that would live here. This could be a young couple, a young family, an older couple. You're not going to have a family with 4 kids unless they're living in all of it. Just as you think about your kind of target market, which we always need to be thoughtful of, but also careful of when it comes to fair housing law regulations. So what we do then is we plug this in. Okay. We are going to plug this in as though it were a straight investment property, and then we can look at it as a house hack as well. So let's just run it as they have it listed, if we were to buy it from the Dutton Group, as though you were putting 20% down, interest rate of 4.5. You tend to, so on commercial properties, you tend to pay higher interest rates. So I got a single family on 3.25 as an investment earlier this year, but this would be fairly close for a duplex. You might be able to get a 1/4 point lower, but you're not going to be getting the traditional kind of bottom of market primary residence single family home rates. I'm fine with those assumptions. The monthly income is $1,400 a month. They're assuming a 3% annual increase, which for this part of the country, you're not typically going to see. So let's back that down to 1% just to be safe. My preference is analyze the property as conservatively as possible. You can say maybe things blow up and you get a 5% increase next year. Never assume it. Assume the worst possible financial outlay, and then if it's better than the worst possible scenario, then you're in a good position. Vacancy rate 5% is fine. I shared last time that if you're managing attentively, you really shouldn't be dealing with vacancy issues unless you get bad tenants who create situations that require vacancy. But that's on you if you do that. Management fee, they haven't built in here, but let's do it just to be safe. Do you pay property manager or you personally manage? Okay. 7 to 10% is the fairly typical range. I'm going to do 10 just, again, to be as conservative as possible. Even, and I hit this point last time, even if you are planning to manage it yourself, write it in, and you can always pay yourself. Again, be as conservative as possible because one day you may not want to do that. And it's nice to have banked on that expense.
Are there certain things you have to do when one renter moves out before you put another renter in Stark County? Like painting the walls or carpets or anything that's mandatory?
I don't know of anything that's mandatory.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Is there an occupancy inspection requirement?
No,
Okay,
I've never had an occupancy inspection. I have everything outside of the city.
okay,
I think inside the city is a little bit more strict,
okay.
but it depends.
In St. Louis, for us, whenever it turned over, we had to do an occupancy inspection. It was very base level. It was, hey, are the smart smoke detectors where they need to be? We had a exterior step that was crumbling a little bit on one side, and so that was a structural issue. So it's a little kind of ticky-tack stuff. It's not like major, and if there's a mold problem in the basement, like it's mainly to help protect, to ensure that the landlords aren't providing unsafe environments for their tenants. Good question. Property taxes on this one I saw were $21.85. Total insurance, that's probably a little low given that it's a duplex. So let's add 50% to it. I think I mentioned last time for maintenance, I like to do 1% rule, 1% of the purchase price of the property. Some people go higher. That's where I land. It's always good to build in other costs. I don't know what that is, but I think they're factoring maintenance in as that. So let's just leave that there. It's better, again, to have more than less. So value appreciation 3% per year. Let's go down to 2% here. We're not going to look too much at the holding length because our plan is to hold this forever. Did I miss any categories here? We are saying that it does not need repairs. We'll talk more about that in a second because if I were purchasing this, I would make updates. All right, so it spits this out, and each calculator is going to look at things a little bit differently. But we talked last time about cap rate. Cap rate is if you're investing cash, if you were not unleveraged capital is what that represents. So unleveraged capital is going to yield 6.2% per year. That's okay. That's better than a savings account. That's better than bonds. That's better than the stock market sometimes, but not usually. Not right now, I'll tell you that. So I would look at that number and say, that's okay. One of the cool things about real estate investing is that you can control variables. So let's go back and let's say, okay, so this, I happen to see that this property has been sitting on the market for 65 days. You're generally not going to pay top dollar for something that's been sitting 2 months. So let's take 10 grand off that. And let's say one of the tenants moves out. One thing that we're not researching now, but that is important to do as part of this process is rent market analysis. So you can look and see, okay, $1,400 all in, that's where it is now. If long-term tenants have been there, odds are good that the rents are too low, because typically landlords don't keep pace when the tenants stay. And that's, in my mind, that's an okay thing. It's better to have quality tenants than to always have, yeah, if they're taking good care of the property, they pay on time, they're low drama. I'd rather have that than an extra $100 a month over the course of time. I take that every day.
I do think it's important to know even how to, like, I can't quite figure out how to research what rents are in a certain area.
So there's a couple of tools, and this is one of those instances in which the more real estate you do in an area, the better a sense you have of this. One is call property managers in the area. You know, Shauna is going to be joining us at our next class. Someone like her would be a fantastic conversation partner. Hey, I'm looking in this zip code, 2-bed in decent condition. What are you typically seeing that go for? There's also a great tool called Rentometer. Let's do this address. Lakeside, what? Canton. There we go. Okay, so it's a 2-1. And
650 and 750.
let's do 700 just to, so this is going to tell us if we're off base or below base. Okay, rent may be too high. Interesting. So in this area, so they're basically running rent comps. The nice thing about this, so you can hop on Zillow and see what's for rent. You can hop on, I like a tool called Pad Mapper, where you can see rents. It pulls from all the different sites as well.
Say it again, what is it?
Pad Mapper, PADMAPPER, and play around. And there's no substitute for playing around and actually looking at 10 or 20 rentals in the area just to get a good sense. But this is saying based upon comps, and that's what's currently available, what's recently been rented, which is Pad Mapper is not going to help you to see. Pad Mapper is going to show you the current market, which is only a partial indicator. It shows you what you're competing with, not where the market truly is. It's saying average in this area for 2-1s is 626, median 650, which median is typically a more accurate representation of what's happening in the market. This is not factoring in, okay, it's showing us physical proximity, and I don't know that area well enough to say, ooh, if we get on this side of this road, how much different is it? I know that in that part of the city, that's going to matter. Most communities have that.
Close to Meyer to the lake, and I feel like the comps they've got are probably less desirable areas.
Yes.
There's over at CNF. I lived over there a couple of years ago, and I was renting for $750.
Interesting.
Single bed or 2-bed, 1-bed back house.
Yep. So. Well, and my aim, so we have a little 4-bed, 1-bath bungalow in Northwest Akron, there's plenty of homes around that rent for less. Our house is nicer. Like we've made it nicer. You know, okay, so I could look at this. I'm actually curious to see, just while we're on it, 1612 Garmin Road. Oops.
Sure, last word.
So it's technically a 4-bed, 1 bath. Let's see what they say here.
There's not enough results.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's your free option.
Probably 3 beds.
Right, yeah. Is it more than 3-bedroom area?
Yeah. See, average is 875 and we've got it at 12. And the 2 bedrooms, they're the, you know, it's the pitched ceiling upstairs. So we marketed as a 3-bedroom and said, oh, you know, you can use this as a 4th bedroom, but we would rather you be pleasantly surprised with the home rather than saying like, well, we could sleep in there if we needed to. So anyway, that's one way of doing it, but I think there's no substitute for really knowing an area and even knocking on doors and asking the neighbors what they pay for truly comparable properties. I'm convinced, again, being a small time landlord that's mildly attentive with a quality property, you'll always be able to get well above market rents, not because you're greedy, but because there's a lot of absentee corporations that just aren't all that dialed in. And so
You're a boutique landlord.
Sure.
You're not Walmart, right?
Right.
You know, you're.
Be the Dunder Mifflin.
The Dunder Mifflin. So we're changing some assumptions. Let's say we look at that area and we think that we can not do crazy, you know, a whole lot better, but let's just say a little bit better. Let's say we can get up to 1550 all in, $10,000 less. Hey, maybe we can even get a slightly better interest rate. Let's just drop that a smidge and see what that does. So we were at 6.19%. Now we're at 7. So that changed it by a, you know, 1.5, which is not bad. But again, I think cap rate is a helpful tool. But as you think about actual return on your money going in, you're at 16.2. We're not going to look at that because that doesn't matter. Cash on cash return. Oh, that's over time. That's your initial investment yielding that NOI, which is mildly helpful. Did you want to run it as a house hack? So, well, in that scenario, let's run a mortgage calculator really quick. So, and we'll move on from this in a second. This is probably less riveting for the folks that are on the screen. I could,
I love this.
yeah, I could live in this stuff all day. So the nice thing with a house hack is lower expenses, but you're not generally going to be putting 20% down in that scenario. You could, but you won't have to. So let's put 5% down because you qualify for a primary residence loan. You're going to get a better interest rate, probably not 3% because it is still a multifamily property. So let's go 3.75. We know what the taxes are. Home insurance is fine. So $659.50 a month. So if Preston is looking at this saying, hey, I want to grow my portfolio this way, I know that on average, these units are getting $700 a month. Maybe you choose to live in the smaller one that gets the lower rent, and effectively your mortgage payment is covered by the upstairs tenant, which is the design. That's an ideal house hack. So if you were to come to me saying, hey, I want to invest in this property, am I crazy? I'd say, no, you're not crazy. Assuming that the property is actually in decent shape. So let's look at that again. And do a quick, actually, there was another document I was going to send myself. There's a million of these out here.
Mark, do you ever ask the seller for the last 3 years schedule, what is that schedule?
Schedule E?
Whatever, yeah, for.
I haven't. I've been asked that before when selling property, and we track that. That's a better question. That's a deeper question to ask. But the question beneath that, for those who've not done that before, D, if you can't, you guys can't hear, D just asked if we ever ask for a Schedule E, and basically that's your P&L. That's gonna show, did the property make money? What were the actual expenses? It's not rare to read a write-up. You know, the agent doesn't always know everything, and the agent's gonna do their best to get the numbers on it. Sometimes asking for leases is always valuable. Okay, it's long-term tenants. Can we see leases? There's so many terrible landlords that don't have them anymore, which blows my mind. How many people are out there unprotected? But yeah, Schedule E is going to show the actual expenses. Oh, you spent $4,000 that month because of, having to replace a heating system.
Is it typical to expect a Schedule E to go back? You said you asked for 2 or 3 years.
I just,
an organized landlord's going to have that.
Okay, and that's a reasonable request.
Oh,
by a
totally,
buyer,
totally.
2 or 3 years.
Yep.
because a typical realtor filling in the blanks, if they're not super detailed, they're just gonna ask for what was your maintenance, what's the average, what's whatever, and the seller's gonna pull some figures out of somewhere, and hopefully they're going to be fairly honest. But the real figures are gonna be on what they reported to the, IRS. And so if I was going back and selling again from people, I would probably say, do you mind if I could see? Because, we are somewhat on the line when we're representing something.
Yep.
Also, and worst case scenario, we can tell the potential buyer, yes, we did get these from the scheduled fees, or they were shown to me, so I averaged 3 years, or, 1 year maintenance, if you've got to put a furnace in 1 year, you're not gonna have a furnace for a while. So
Right.
1 year could really blow, the numbers, so.
No, that's a great best practice.
And even when you ask the seller, you don't know them, it's not a long-time investor or somebody, you also figure out how truthful they are on the figures. And,
Right.
Vacancies and, just one of those general things that just even by asking.
Yes,
beyond
I
the
think
numbers.
there is, pardon my crassness, but I heard the term recently, pro forma porn, which is basically, it's fun to analyze. It's, this looks so good, and the rents in this area can be this, and it won't have any issues. And it's like, no, life always happens. 100% vacancy. You're going to have issues. There's going to be repairs. Taxes go up over time, which doesn't mean that we don't put a pro forma together. And for those who don't know, pro forma is basically like, hey, without variables, this is how the numbers work. And then you introduce variables like people, and it gets a little bit different. And a Schedule E is going to take you a little bit deeper on that.
Now, what about, like, for us, we own one rental property and we just have our checking account, like, so if somebody asked, if I went to sell that property and somebody asked me for my Schedule E, like, I don't have one.
Well, you filed something with the IRS, didn't you, with the income?
I assume so. My husband did.
I'm
So,
sure you
Mhm.
have a schedule.
okay.
Yeah, if you're wanting the tax breaks for that investment.
Uh-huh.
you
So
know,
is there potentially, though, how do I say it? You take the maximum number of tax breaks you can. I don't know. It may not
Yes.
be, how do I say it? I don't know how to
Yes.
say it.
So there's a little bit of a catch-22 in this game. One is taking maximum deductions. Hey, I'm tracking every expense, I'm tracking all miles, I'm tracking all meals related to this business. That's going to reduce your taxable, it's going to reduce your taxable income, which is great. That's really one of the great perks of it. And I've known some people who've gotten themselves in a bind by doing that so well that when they needed to qualify for more financing, it didn't show that they made as much as they really had because of the way that they'd run it. You need to be honest, obviously, with your bookkeeping and where's the money coming from. But some people don't deduct as much as they might for those reasons.
Or that it wouldn't look as profitable to a potential buyer.
And let me show you something just while we're on this.
Sorry, I didn't mean to keep you off track.
No, not at all. This is great. Let's see if I can remember my personal. I'm just going to show you guys a sample schedule E really quick.
My seller just sent over, he's like, here's my income. I had somebody ask for his, like, they didn't say Schedule E, but they want to know, his history of profit and loss. He just texted, or he just sent it over. I'm gonna compare it to yours, Stacy.
So let's do Sydney. So this is basically, this is our multifamily in St. Louis. And basically, top line is income, profit. So, and I'm doing it month by month because, you look at April of last year, that's when we turned a tenant over and we had a couple weeks where we were painting it and fixing it up. So that wasn't actual. So I like month by month numbers because I'm a financial nerd, just because it helps you to see trends. And then down here, you see, I didn't do mileage. Could I do that? Yes. I lived 3 miles away from it. It was whatever. If I'm driving 40 miles to do it, then sure. Same with cleaning and maintenance. Oh, did I buy a light bulb here, there? Did I get a, broom here and there? Sure. Whatever. But then the real expenses, mortgage insurance, mortgage insurance, mortgage interest, taxes, hazard insurance, utilities. Looks like I slipped on that there. Or I might have just lumped that all together. Sewer, all that. And so expenses, and then when you look at the actual net operating income, like, okay, I know I'm making good money on this property, but look here, April, May, negative, barely anything. This doesn't include debt service. It includes mortgage interest, but it does include actual principal pay down.
Can I just see if I take a picture just of the left I just kind of want that left column. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Just
Do you want me to just share it with you?
Sure.
I don't care. It'll be view only.
Like,
When that, Kelly?
yes, 2 ends.
Sorry, I've done that before. All right, we'll move forward here. So that just gives you guys a taste of another angle on it. Good question. Okay. Let's get back here. So that was a kind of a taste of property analysis with rehab, and we're not going to talk as much about this. My recommendation to be conservative when it comes to finances carries into being conservative when it comes to rehab, meaning plan to buy more than you think you will, and plan for it to be the expensive version when you yourself might go a cheaper route. So if you're looking at it and saying, okay, the kitchen needs an update, the floors need an update, what else did we see in there? That's probably what I do. I would take that carpet out, and whether the hardwood underneath is okay, whether there's luxury vinyl plank that I can put in, and then I would do a kitchen refresh. With rehab, this is true in your personal residence as well as in investing. There are some things are going to yield higher returns than others. Some things are just good to do, but for example, replacing windows, a really good thing to do for the life of the home, is not going to be as meaningful from a value standpoint or a rent standpoint as a new kitchen is. But it's probably going to be just about as expensive, depending on what the property is. We did in our little Garmin house, we did about $8,500 worth of updates on a $95,000 home. And probably 6,000 of that was in the kitchen. That was new countertops, that was new cabinets, that was new appliances. It was a small kitchen, but that's how we approached it. But I factored in $12,000 and we came out ahead. And then timeline, double it. Just talking about estimating. So if you're thinking, oh, this should be, I think I can get this done nights and weekends in a month, right? 2 months. If contractors are involved, make it even further, not because they don't care, they aren't working hard, but because they have time frames and they got other jobs that they're
I
juggling.
can't find materials right now.
They might not be able to find materials. Exactly. Yeah. And in a market like this, especially, you do not want to be naive about the costs of rehab, particularly when it comes to materials, and lumber is the one that we're seeing a lot of.
I have a friend who's, he works for Dervasi, he's gonna do electrical. He said there's certain boxes they want to put where other friends are at. They can't even find them right now. You can't find anything.
Yep, it's crazy. Other thoughts, questions about analysis?
What about if you were looking at it from the standpoint of for this home, my down payment is going to be 20% for this property. So you have a 20% down payment, and my closing costs are, $5,000. So I'm in at that amount, and then you can that would be it's a different calculation. Like, is that your cash on cash return? I don't know. I guess I just think there's so many different ways sometimes to crunch numbers, and it based on, I guess, what your goals are.
Right.
That would be important to look at. Like our little house in Worcester, we bought in 2012. We paid $23,000 for it because it had just been sitting on the market. It already had a renter in it who'd been there for a long time. It's still the same renter.
That's amazing.
It is, and it's a single family home, so they do all of the maintenance. It's kind of cool. Like we went down. He's a ham radio operator, so we went down in that basement, and he was like packed in. He's got we're like, this guy's never living, and he's got antennas in the backyard.
Hey.
So he does so much of he just hardly ever calls us. So at this point, we've raised the rent.
What is it?
$650. It started out at $500, I think. And I think, if based on what the Zillow's estimate is, it's $65,000-$70,000. So, it's just all we did was put on a $7,000 to pay down 20% down and whatever our closing costs were. And everything else that's ever gotten done to that property, we've had enough to cover it. So he's paid for it for us.
That's a case study.
House,
yeah.
Other
yeah.
than
yeah.
my,
It's a free asset.
$12,000 investment that I put in initially, and
And that's how it sounds like that's been a fine thing. Like it sounds like plenty of seasoned people would look at that and be like, eccentric long-term guy, that might give me some pause, but it's worked out. He's paid his rent and you've gotten a free asset out of it for years
now. He
now.
doesn't pay on the 1st, he pays on the 7th or the 5th. So at first there was this thing, but that over the last however many years that's been now, they just consistently it's on the 7th or the 5th. I'm like, that's
Right.
Years, right? Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds like a
Yeah, and it's a community that we know.
Right, that's what you want.
At the end of the day, so I think a rental property calculator, you need to be versed in it, but at the end of the day, it has to cash flow. And it has to cash flow, rule number one. Rule number two, conservatively estimate everything else that needs to happen, from repairs to vacancies and all that. And whether it's from the cash flow produced by the property or reserves that you have to cover that event, if you're following those two rules, you're going to be fine. I'm convinced that success in this game long term has more to do with hitting base hits than hitting home runs. That deal with plenty of people, it's not big enough to worry about, or I'm not sure about this guy. Hey, it's worked. You don't need to.
Yeah, I mean, plenty of people did pass it because it had just been there so long. It was
That's where you find value.
My friends were like, let's offer 23 or whatever it was, and they took it. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, right. Someday. All right, let's keep the conversation moving. I'm glad to, if someone wants to look at the deal, and I'm not the expert, but I
You wanna
love.
do mine on the micro 18 Arlington?
Let's do it afterwards,
That's fine.
just because I got a few other things I
Oh,
want to
sure.
cover. Okay, so you've crunched the numbers, you've kind of counted the cost, so to speak, and you're now at a place to say, hey, okay, I think I want to write an offer. One note, again, coming from having the confidence that comes from the knowledge of knowing your numbers, gives you the freedom and a posture to write an offer based upon numbers that work. And rule of investing is, hey, if your numbers don't work, then the deal doesn't work. You don't fall in love. List price is a suggestion, but also, so it works both ways. I think there's plenty of investors say, oh, I gotta get a deal. Well, a deal according to what? A deal according to the list price? No, a deal according to your plan and according to the numbers. It's possible. So say each of these units rented for $800 a month. And you could say, you know what, I could actually pay up to $160 on, I'm making this up. I could pay up to $160 on this, and this would still be a fair deal. There's plenty of people that say like, no, just out of principle, I'll write for $120 and we'll see what happens. Like, no, you could still win at or above list price. I think that's a common misconception in finding value in the markets. Like, no, the value is based upon your understanding of the property, not necessarily based upon list price.
How long was this one on the market?
65 days as of today.
Well, there's investors out there. I think that would tell you something.
Right.
And that's been sitting there for 2 months.
Right. Typically, in a market like this, unless it's $1 million property where there's going to be a super narrow thing, it's like, there might be a story. What's going on in the basement, or what's happening in that garage? What's happening with that tenant? I think that's one of the things with multifamily properties. I looked at a fourplex. This is another rule. This is going a little bit off base, but weird is never good when it comes to rental property. You want it as boring and simple and stock as possible. For me, you see a lot of converted homes in this area. Hey, this was clearly once a single family home, and now we've made it a triplex. Which means it has a weird access out the back. And I looked at a fourplex, quote unquote, in Copley, just down the road from where we live. And it was very clearly an old, like stately old home that they mashed and sliced into a fourplex. And all the tenants, it was kind of a commune scenario where they all kind of shared this and we had doors to this. That's great. But when someone moves out, or some relationship goes bad, this thing is not designed for four separate existences. Maybe, yeah. These were all like these single people in their mid-50s. It was an interesting scenario, and it was overpriced, so it just didn't work. One note on what to negotiate. There's infinite elements that you can negotiate in a deal. If your time horizon is forever, then it is, say this property needs either major mechanicals, or there's a sewer lateral issue, or something along those lines that is a $8,000 or $12,000 ticket. Okay, that's going to change your numbers, and you don't have that money. With an investment property, again, the numbers have to work. It's easier to write those sorts of things into the deal. Hey, okay, you got it listed for $150. I'll buy it for you for $155, but you're taking care of these issues at the gate. If that's a sticking point. I did that actually on the Sydney property that I showed you the numbers on a second ago. We had a sewer lateral and a roof. It was probably $25,000 worth of work between the two, because it's a big property. It was a lot of excavation to get the deal done. And I basically bought it for what he had listed. It had sat for 3 months, so paying list price would have been crazy. I bought it for really $20,000 less than list, but paid the full price, and it was taken care of with our approved contractors. And we pay an extra, whatever that is, $40 a month for the life of the loan, which might feel silly, but it enabled it to work in that scenario for us. Financing, I'm not a mortgage lender. I'm not going to take a super deep dive on it, but I shared this with you, Preston. At the end of the day, find a deal and the money will find you. Now, going conventional routes, if you are looking to finance, is typically going to be the cheapest. Over the life of the loan, you're going to get the best terms. It's going to be a solid loan. It's not going to be sold more than it needs to necessarily. 20% down, you're going to avoid PMI. You're not going to qualify for PMI typically if you're not living there also. I have PMI on one of my properties and it just irks me. But yeah, we could do a whole separate discussion on finding financing. I am in favor of financing properties. I'm in a position now where I have to, but even if I didn't have to, I think I still would, because that just enables you to add fuel to what you're doing.
Well, that's the piece that I think, like, so you buy one a year, and I know for us both being real estate agents, and we haven't hit our 2-year mark, so what a lender will give us is maybe not, if one of us had a regular steady job, there's an argument for that, right? Because
Sure.
you're gonna have a lender look more favorably on that. But even, like looking at something, if it were to cash flow, and at what point does it become a business? And then is there a loan area for that as opposed to, I don't know, maybe there's not, maybe it's just your
Probably
standard.
need more cash reserves,
I don't know.
like just more cash in the bank. Just liquid money, you probably need more, just depending on your lendability.
Yeah, I think the price of patience is always almost always worth it, unless it's a deal where, and in a market like this, it's unlikely that you're going to find a deal so good that you just can't miss. So, hey, you guys are almost there. That being said, if someone had just literally gotten their license a month ago and was looking at finding a property and, oh, here's this deal, whether they're a hard money lender, private money lender, going joint partner with somebody on the
And
deal.
how do you find all those, the hard money lenders, like, you see, I don't know, there's different groups where people are talking about that, but who you trust, how do you do like a syndicate? How do you define those kinds of people people say, oh, it's so much better to own multiple properties and do more people together. And I'm like,
Yeah,
no,
in
like, but
theory.
then I'm getting less of, and how do I leverage that property then? If I go in on it with somebody else and want to buy a property every year or whatever, I only own half of the property. So I'm not convinced that that's, and maybe.
I'm with you. I prefer simplicity over complexity, even if it means a slightly lower return or slightly more hassle. I'm not looking to own a thousand unit empire or anything like that. And there's plenty of people in this space where it's just always grow. I think if you can do it simply, if you can do it by yourself, say there's a family member who has money and say, hey, we'll lend you on these terms. I would be of the mind, hey, that might be something worth pursuing, but find a way to buy them out of it. I think not that long-term partnerships can't be good things, but I think it's easier on taxes, it's easier on what trusts or LLCs or joint venture documents you got together. And I'm just not one to want to fiddle with that stuff. Yeah, syndication or thing. I've got a friend who's in syndication. I get approached every month saying, hey, here's a new opportunity. And granted, the minimum buy-in is higher than what I'm willing to pay at this point. But the complexity piece, having a small piece of a really big pie for me at this stage hasn't made sense to this point.
You're going along good right now, but if you're in with the group and then all of a sudden something happens, one of you gets sick, whatever happens in life, and then you need to get out of that situation, sometimes those things.
Well, I'm just curious, like for you or the friends with context, like I'm just thinking, you don't all own the exact same properties, or you do?
No.
Okay, so then like somehow it's set up as a company and you're essentially.
Yeah, and you can set up a company for an individual purchase. Hey, this is a joint venture. We're buying this $2 million property. But it's not like we are always the thing. This is a thing. We are partners in it. So you can do deal specific partnerships for sure. It doesn't have to be a till death do you part sort of situation. But it is added complexity.
Well, and we had a buyer who was like, why don't you guys go in on this with us? They know we're in the market. Is that something? Because I don't enough about what I'm getting myself into. One, I've heard someone say you need to know the person you're going to go into business with for a minimum of 3 years.
Sure.
They need to be like minded in certain ways. But then even if I were on board with all of that, I still don't even understand how it would exactly play out.
Share equity.
So
So
Jessica has asked,
if we,
I can see that. if you want to
that
pick
might
up
be
on
my
that
fault,
complex,
Jessica, now that I say this.
But outside of that, I wouldn't.
Is that better, Jessica?
That's a million times better. Thank you so much.
Is your microphone on?
You know, I'm not allowed. I
Okay,
did not
okay,
get
that
on.
should be better. I had two things up and I think it's my fault.
That's okay. It was just hard to follow sometimes.
Oh, go ahead, Jessica.
I said it was just hard to follow.
Okay, can you hear better now?
I can hear just fine. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Just a couple notes and we will keep moving. And I'd love to talk more about that with you, Lynette, because I think if you can do it simply, I mean, people partner because, oh, we can accomplish more together than I could on my own. But if you're in a position to accomplish something on your own, particularly as you learn what you like and what you don't like, that's the route that I would recommend.
You can destroy a friendship.
Yeah, if you're not careful. Yeah, I think or family. Yeah.
Yeah, trust me, I see.
Deals approached with the wouldn't it be great sort of conversation over beers. Not that it's wrong to have those conversations, but those relationships need to be protected more than colleagues do because there's more at stake relationally. And I say, like, I talk with agents who are looking to grow teams all the time. It's like, oh, well, we know this person. Oh, we get along. We've known each other forever. It's like, great. You need to be extra careful. Doesn't mean it can't work, but don't bypass the process because there's more at stake relationally.
They always say don't deal with family and friends.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, there's just more risks there. Just a couple notes on the acquisition note. So purchasing rented versus vacant property. So Preston, if you were to buy this just as an investment property and you're able to furnish leases, or the current owner is able to furnish leases for it, that can count, a percentage of that can count towards your income in your loan officer's underwriting for the deal. And so you're
Say that again.
basically, there are properties that you can qualify for, that you can get lending for, regardless of what you make, because it stands on its own.
That's what I was wondering, where it's sort of like a business and the income justifies the cost and you have enough on top of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So they will factor that in. If you're just buying a vacant single family home and you say, oh, well, this should rent for $1,200 a month, they don't care about that.
Leases in place and
Right. Show me what exists. Show me the existing business.
history.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Even if you might say, I'm planning on turning them over and updating it and getting new tenants in, a loan officer will count leases towards your income. It's not 100%. I think it's 75%. And it might depend on the loan
I think they
officer.
call it the value or the income approach or something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
And then who do you in general recommend for lenders? Like, not a mortgage company, probably, more of a.
So my preferred lender right now, and I've got 4 mortgages with 4 different companies right now. The Civista Bank, and it's a local bank, but they've got a commercial specialist who does a fantastic job. Not because I'm buying commercial property, but commercial loans that don't need to be sold and backed up in the same way. And his application process is more rigorous, but once you're good, you're good. It's not shaky. I could send you his info. Scott Peters is his name. But yeah, I mean, if you're just looking at a traditional, anything from a single family to a 4-unit property, the household names and lending should be able to work with you. It's typically when we're looking at getting this retail space, or we already have 4 conventional mortgages and we need something outside of the box there. But Civista does great work. And then perks of being an agent, and I don't know if you guys have done this before in the purchase of your own properties, but you get commission when you buy a house. You don't get charged that commission to the market center. You pay a brokerage, basically beefed up brokerage fee. I think it's totaling $475. But if it's more valuable to have that money go towards the purchase of the home than for you to make that money at the sale of the home, you can write that into the contract. as you know, and so, hey, if I'm getting a 3% buyer broker comp on this, you can apply that $3,000, say, to closing costs and purchase price and reducing what you'd need to have saved in order to make the purchase. So if
Does
you're
that
saying,
count as income then?
no, not in that scenario.
So it's not taxed.
Right.
I like that.
So if you're looking to say, hey, how do I do this a little bit sooner? Again, we're talking about a few $1,000s, unless you're buying $1 million property, then it's worth having a look at. And I just spoke with Rich Cosgrove to verify that I'm not making things up there.
So you still pay the $475?
You do, yeah. Yep. All right. I want to be mindful of time. Just a few notes on rehab. Again, I am not Chip Gaines. I do not love rehab. I am an optimistic person, which means I imagine what could be. And then when they don't go the way that I want them to, when I'm banging my head under a kitchen sink, I lose my patience so quickly. What am I doing down here? And yet doing some of your own rehab can be a great way to save money and to add value to a home. So couple thoughts. Don't buy a totaled property. You know, in the world of cars, if your car is worth $10,000 and the repairs after an accident, I think it's like 75% of the value. If it was $7,500, they kind of totaled in, you're not going to get that car repaired by the insurance company. Similarly with homes, and this is basically a rule to help you avoid really beaten down fixer-uppers, particularly as you're getting started. It's one thing if you've done 100 homes, but if you're just getting started, don't buy the biggest project in the district, because if other people couldn't do it, don't be so naive to think that you're the one that can. So don't buy if the house is a $75,000 house and you're looking at $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000 in repair, just move on. Again, I think buying tired homes, and this one's a great example of it. Like I see this house and see, okay, there's work to be done in order to get top of market rents, but you don't need to be Chip Gaines in order to get there. That's a better deal than, oh, we've got a mold situation and the floorboards are rotting and this structural situation looks a little bit shaky. Like just leave that to someone else unless you want to get stuck in a money pit scenario. My personal rule of thumb is I don't want to spend more than 10% of the purchase price of the property on rehab. That's pretty strict. You know, that means I got a $10,000 budget on a $100,000 house. And things can get expensive fast, especially if you're buying systems or a roof. But that's kind of what's governed my process so far. I hit on what to do versus, oh no, I didn't hit on that. There are certain things. So flooring is easy, and we're all different here. We all have different levels of experience. Flooring is easy. Simple plumbing is not that hard. Simple electrical, you always want to be careful with electrical, but I've found that not to be as hard as you would initially think. Landscaping, painting. If you look at and say, hey, my rubric is with basic tools in 20 minutes on YouTube, can I figure out how to do this without making a huge idiot of myself and end up spending more money on it than I would otherwise?
Do you have your homes inspected?
Yes. I'm thinking in one purchase, we accepted a previous inspection. You know, they furnished the full documentation and we're like, oh, okay, that works for us. But I've never fully bypassed that. And in the investing space, that is common. You know, you do 50 homes and you know what you're looking for and you bypass that. But for me, I don't have the level of confidence. I'd rather have the peace of mind and a few $100s out of my pocket.
Do you have like a checklist by any chance or something you use when you are just walking through a home?
Yes. So there's count, and that was one of the things I was going to email to myself. I can send it to you guys afterwards. Countless tools. If you were to look home rehab checklist or home walkthrough checklist, it's going to give you a full. Here's 80 items. And I can't recommend that strongly enough, because you will, especially as a real estate professional, when you're in homes all the time, you just get used to seeing things. And I heard a story, someone making this mistake. It's like, oh, we failed to realize that there wasn't a basement. You just don't think about it because you're like, oh, well, look at this. And it looks like that was built in 1978. And this, and then you just don't know what you're not paying attention to. Yeah, and I've made mistakes in that vein before. And so a checklist just to help take some of the guesswork out of it. Not because you're promising to fix everything, but just because you want to take inventory of everything. In this business, contractors you can trust are the thing. If you got a guy that does good work and charges a reasonable rate, that's worth its weight in gold. That being said, even if you're not a bona fide expert, always verify. Trust but verify. Trust but verify. Never peace out and say, all right, let me know when you're done, and I'll cut you a check. I'm not a micromanager. I'm not a, I'm
Don't pay people up front. Wait till- don't-
Yep.
when they're done.
Yep. My note on payment is if they need something up front, it should be no more than a small percentage of what should be done. If they need installments, and every contractor, particularly small contractors, and even those that do good work, they may not be able to afford, depending on the scope of the project. Hey, we're doing a full gut rehab. They may not be able to float that for the 6 or 8 weeks that it's going to take to do. You need to have a plan that's going to enable you to hold them accountable to their work. Because if you just write the check up front and it turns out that they don't have as much integrity as you thought, you can just get yourself
My
in some
friend's
trouble.
running that the hard way, when he's trying to run out of that putt-putt place. He paid people up front and they do the one day's work, not show up.
Yep.
He's gone through several people. And finally, he's got a good team.
Yep. That takes time. And when you've got a good one, treat them well and pay them what they're worth. You get what you pay for in a lot of industries, and I think contractors are no exception to that. With the exception of the guy that I have right now, he's a gem, and he doesn't charge very much money. He's slow, and his availability is low, and so you do it on his terms. But
They do good work. That's the most important.
yep,
thing.
that's the most important thing. 100%. I just made the note: track everything. Again, I'm a spreadsheet guy when I'm scoping out a project. So this Garmin project. Okay, we think the kitchen needs to be done. Let's break that down. Okay, what appliances, cabinets, countertops, miscellaneous. Build the spreadsheet, estimate it on one side. Okay, so here's the item, your guys' perspective, estimated cost, any notes. So where am I getting this from, or what details do I need to know here? And then actual cost, and then have I paid this or not? And that enables you to track your expenses through the project, make adjustments as you go. I've been really high sometimes, really low sometimes, but real-time tracking in addition to the initial cost estimation as you're getting started. Because again, I've only done this a few times. When you've done this 20 or 30 times, you just know what this stuff costs intuitively. But yeah, don't accidentally spend $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 more than you have. Any thoughts about rehab? All right, tenants, and then we're almost out. And Dee, you could teach this portion as well as any. So I'll talk, and you can editorialize. You had it set up well. But this is my process. First of all, clarify what you're looking for, and that is not. I made point number 2 there, fair housing laws. Got to be careful there, especially if you live in one side of the duplex and rent the other side. If you're an occupant, fair housing laws don't apply in the same way, which is kind of interesting to me. But as an investor, they 100% do if it's an other thing. And as a real estate professional, all the more. So we're held to a higher standard, and we need to be extra careful there. So anything related to race, religion, ethnicity, family, marital status, etc. Got to be thoughtful there. That being said, stability of employment, income ratio, I use a multiplier. If your income isn't at least 3 times what the monthly rent is, then does that mean that they absolutely couldn't pay? Not necessarily, but when life happens, when a car repair needs to be made, that means they're likely going to feel the pinch that much more. So if someone's at 4 or 5x, all the better. For me, I'd rather they be 3, 4, 5x than 10x, because the 10x person is going to be more upwardly mobile and more likely to turn over after a year, which doesn't mean that they're a bad tenant. But for me, if I can have a tenant for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, that's a better scenario. But clarify that up front, just in your mind, that helps protect from some of the trouble you could get yourself in. So here's my process. Here's how I do it. So I set it up. I set it up through Cozy, and Cozy has now been bought by Apartments.com, and I haven't done this with Apartments.com yet, even though everything migrated over with them. It's a free landlord tenant management platform. You create the listing there as though you are, doing it on Zillow or something like that. And then it goes to all the places. You can also do this just on Zillow. If you're only going to do it in one place, Zillow is the place to do it. They have a good inquiry application interface. So set it up there, get it out there. And my process is setting up a funnel so that people move through it in batches rather than you're just going crazy for a few weeks trying to find the right person. So I set it up, and I'll just say, I'm setting it up on a Monday. I'm not going to meet with anybody at the earliest until the following weekend. So I set it up, people inquire, ask a question. When I set it up, and I could email you guys a version of this, what I do, once the unit is fully ready to rent, it's painted, it's looking as good as it's going to look for the pictures. I also do a quick video walkthrough, 3-minute video walkthrough just on my phone. It's nothing, there's no drones involved or no Matterport or anything like that. It's just helping people to see the actual house. And, we've all seen the pictures. Oh, this looks a whole lot better on the pictures than in real life. I want them to see, my Garmin house doesn't have a basement. I want them to know that before they come and see it. What else was going on with it? That might have been there was one other little thing that I wanted them to understand. I forget, but you want anything that might be off-putting to someone, you want them to see that in that video, because you don't want someone to drive, meet them, and oh, well, that's a deal breaker right out the gate. So I take a 3-minute video, anybody who expresses interest. So 3-minute video, post it to YouTube privately, create a link. And so it's just ready for me to send whenever. When someone inquires, say, hey, here, take a look. And if you're still interested, I'd be glad to have a conversation. So that enables them to kind of visit the house by themselves, so to speak, via video. If they're still interested, I'm then going to have a 5 to 7 minute phone conversation. And I'm not even calling it an interview. It's, hey, tell me about yourself. And this is some of what Dee was sharing. Really, why are you looking to move? Is almost as much as you'll need to know for a lot of people. Oh, well, I'm in this bad situation. Or, you get a sense for drama pretty quick. Oh, we've been looking for 6 months and we just haven't. It's like, oh, I feel bad, but also, I'm not looking to run a halfway house here. You just get a sense for people's narrative, what's going on, who are you, would be living with you, who are the stakeholders in this conversation. Tell me about your, what do you do for work now? It's informal, you're not typing furiously, taking down notes or anything like that as you go. But you'll weed some people out in that process. If yes to, if you've got a general decent sense, then I'll send them an application or invite them to apply. I don't invite them to apply before that. I mean, some people will because sites will do that, but applications cost money. Sometimes I will reverse D&E there, depending on the market, but this is how I did it in my most recent one. They applied before we actually did an in-person meeting. You don't have to do it that way. That's how I did it this way. If everything checks out, and you want to make sure that you include a credit check on the application. Do you do a criminal background check as well?
Well, I kind of do my own. You can go on to the county and city sites and put their names in and, birth dates off of the application, et cetera. And you can get some interesting information. It'll tell you, I've never been evicted, and then you go in and you can find the evictions.
Yeah.
Those kind of things.
Yep.
I've never had to or felt, because I've weeded them out along the way, probably.
Yeah.
To have actually formalized a official criminal.
Sure.
Through a source. Or
Right.
someone.
Right.
But I do look everyone up on county records and where the city they're coming from, and I tell them I have, I know, I use the Board of Realtors basic application form. I don't know whether you're using theirs or not, but when they're signing, they're supposed to be signing to allow you to pull the credit.
Right.
And giving you permission, and it allows you then in the future to pull it up. So you
Right.
have them for 5 years, and all of a sudden they're starting to be a little late, or there's some other signs that come up. You have the right to pull.
Yep.
Those kind of things. So, and I do the credit check.
And you said you use a rental application that's available through,
Through Star. I still want to call it Scar because I was
Yeah.
involved with it.
Yeah.
I want Star. And they also have a lease. Now, I do add some things to the lease, depending on the property, certain situations of what they can do or not do, or grills, or, where they can have certain things. But I worked with Mike Gruber over the years, who was the attorney. He's a very good real estate attorney, and his partners, if you have evictions or anything, or ask legal questions. But anyways, he worked with the Board of Realtors and a couple special committees. So on 2 occasions, we went item by item and reviewed that lease with legal counsel, with recommendations. We had Shauna and a couple other people from the property management companies come in and, what about adding this? What about this? Et cetera.
That's great.
And so I've always used those forms.
I think credit check can be one of those things that you might say, they seem to have a good job. A credit check will tell you a lot. And there's some of the sweetest people, and there's nothing, it's not sinful to have a bad credit score, but as you think about, you're placing a bet on a person effectively. And you see one person who, they both seem sweet, they both have good stories and have just started decent jobs. One of them has a 480 credit score and the other has a 620. Again, 480 doesn't mean you're a bad person, but it means there's some disorganization at best and a failure to pay on time as part of that. And do you want to take on that risk or no?
On that application, you also have the right to verify employment and or that income. To me, that's a lengthy process with all the protection and laws nowadays for you to go to the HR person at the Timken company, for example. Then you got to go through all these different steps. Then you have to send them showing where that employee has authorized me to be able to have access to that. All you have to do is ask for last year's W-2s or, that something from their tax records. I say, I don't care how you verify your income. Show me your current pay stub, whatever, to reassure me that what you're putting down is $4,000 a month income. You really have 4. And it's amazing the people that don't know the difference between net and gross income.
Yeah.
And beyond having you used a good factor of 3 times their income, I also do the debt to income ratio.
Yeah.
I ask them for the debts. I tell them I'm just like a bank. If I was going to lend you money to buy a house, just like the bank would be, there is certain criteria, and then I have this criteria. So I'm not only, because they can have wonderful income, but maybe they have child support and they're paying on 3 cars and back student loans,
Yep.
and they've run up credit cards, et cetera. Most of which is going to show up on the credit report. And interestingly enough, I've actually sat down because you can go to annualcreditreport.com, and I sit down with them or on the phone so they know I'm doing it, and I go in and just automatically pull their credit. that way.
Mhm.
And then I offer to give them a copy of it, because most people don't hold their annual income and credit report anyways. So once they've entered it and put a password in and authorized me to use it, I have access to it, but they have access to it. And it's amazing the things that'll, come up through that. To me, it's just the same as having to call a company and give them all the information and verify, and, the hoops that you have to go through sometimes to pull a credit report on somebody.
Right.
It used to be your local friendly lender or somebody I used to have a long time ago. That was really nice. I'd call and say, hey, I've got an application. Here's my authorization signed by both parties. Here's the social security numbers, and bam, half an hour later, they would, but they can't do that anymore.
Right.
So that's how I do that. But I use besides the income verification, the debt to income.
That's good. That's a more accurate number of the full
Yeah,
picture.
Because, like I said, they can have really good income.
Yeah.
You
Oh
know,
yeah.
they-
There's a lot of broke doctors out there.
Yeah, right. So,
I need to keep it moving. We have a few minutes left here. I then do a stacked, I'm just opposed. I value my time too much. Not that this is the right way to do it, but to hey, meet a bunch of the demand is too high right now to be disorganized in my opinion about this. So I do, hey, I'm doing showings on Thursday from 5 until 8. In half-hour increments. I'm meeting, a number of the top candidates, which window works for you. And so I'm there. I'm not going back and forth and hither and yon in order to do it. That's worked for me. I've never not done that, and I've gotten someone that I felt okay with. Just one other note. Oh, which screen am I on? A couple other just kind of Q&As, and we'll dive more into this at our next conversation, which is all about when things go wrong and how to avoid it. Couple categories for tenants. Pets, yes or no, is an important thing to have thought about. I started off as a firm no, and I've softened for some good reasons, and there's things that they're accountable to on that. Smoking, yes or no. We don't permit smoking in any of our units. And then the level of responsibility that you want them to have. Utilities, obviously, to what extent are they caring for the property? To what extent are they replacing that 9-volt battery when the smoke detector battery goes out? Are they replacing light bulbs, or are you those are little things, but those are things that can be the do I want to drive across town to deliver some light bulbs or not? My tone is, the more firm and clear you can make your lease and your initial upfront conversations, the more gracious that enables you to be. But a super vague, squishy lease makes it hard for you to enforce things moving forward. So I've got with the eviction moratorium right now, it's a little bit more difficult, but I had a tenant who, based upon the terms of my lease, eviction moratorium notwithstanding, we could have moved towards eviction just this past month because it's a really strict lease. And you know what? Her brother-in-law and cousin both died in a 1-week period. Life's hitting her hard. We're able to afford the payment, even though she was behind by a week. And I was able to be gracious with her. I'm not, looking to be a bully, but for her to understand that she was in violation of the lease, her payment came in yesterday, 5 days early. It's or however many days early. Yeah, 5 days early. This go around. So I hey, let's be firm, and then we can flex as we go from here. And then stabilization, just as a quick flyby, as you think about your regular rhythm. So they're in, you found your tenant, they've moved in, they're paying their rent, you're moving. I recommend being at the property at least once a quarter. I write a quarterly inspection into my lease, where basically the landlord has the right to do a quarterly inspection. Do I do it every single time? No, but I have the freedom to, and it was clarified in the lease. It's a pop by, check on the air filter on the furnace, for example. You get a sense of, is there a crack in the basement wall, and the stuff that, you've all been in those units as real estate professionals where you get in, it's it's clear that nobody who cares has been in here in a long time, because what on earth has happened? You don't want that to be your property. So quarterly or twice a year at least to be in there. Once it's stabilized from a monthly effort, you're processing rent payments, you're paying the mortgage, I set all my expenses up on automation. So I'm not doing any sort of regular manual bill pay. I probably spend an hour a month on my stabilized properties, just for a frame of reference. Track your expenses. I gave you a taste of that. I think it's helpful. It helps not only at tax time or at future underwriting time if you're trying to get more properties, but it also helps you understand what's working and what's not. I'm actually interested in selling one of our properties now as I've looked more closely at the kind of the P&L, say, hey, we're not making as much on this as we could on another property for what it's currently worth. And so let's think about moving it. Value of a good tenant, pour into it. I'm not one for tons of gifts and going over the top here, but a Christmas card, a little gift card if they went out of their way to meet a contractor who was there for half the day. Little investments, a text here and there. Hey, how are things going as you're getting settled in? It's like your nurture plan for a client who's just bought a new home. The more you can, if you've got a good one, pour into them and help them know that they're appreciated, not because they need to presume on you, but I think that's a relationship that's not to be taken for granted. Then if you're looking to grow, so in my case, we bought a $95,000 property. We poured $8,000 into it. I haven't refinanced it yet, but I would imagine it's worth probably 140, 150 based upon what we've done and what the market's done even the last 6 months. And so I could save for a few years, or I could refinance out 75 or 80% loan to value and take some of that money and keep moving in the process. And that's how people who are really looking to grow do it. I've never personally done that, but that is something worth considering. We are at 3:32, which is past time. Thank you for the folks who were online. So next go round is the good, the bad, the ugly. As I mentioned before, we're going to have a seasoned property manager and maybe another guest come in to dive into kind of the war stories and kind of the I didn't get into real estate investing because of what about this stuff, which keep people away. And so that'll be a storytelling and problem solving conversation, which I think will be a lot of fun. So that's 2 weeks from today, 2 o'clock. I'm going to end the Zoom and you guys can linger and ask questions here.